The women's bantamweight title is on the line at UFC 224 on May 13th. Let's break down those fights. Welcome, fight fans. On this channel, we break down things that are happening in the world of MMA and combat sports. My name is Drew, and today I want to talk a little bit about UFC 223, which is happening on May 13th, and it's happening in Rio de Janeiro. It's been a couple days, or actually about maybe even 2 weeks since I made a video. I gotta admit, after UFC 223, I was a little bit, I don't want to say burnt out, but I was a little bit discouraged afterward. I made some videos. I made a breakdown video for Tony versus Khabib, and then that fight fell through. And then I made one for Max versus Khabib, and then that fight fell through. And after all of the stuff that happened at UFC 223, at the end of it, I found myself really tired. And if I'm being honest too, I know when you get into making YouTube videos, you're going to get some negative comments. But on my video about Conor McGregor, I got some pretty extreme comments, and I don't want to say it like discouraged me from making videos, but it definitely made me reevaluate some of the things that I was doing, and I wanted to make sure that I'm doing it because I enjoy it. And maybe it took me about a week, but I realized I don't really care necessarily what people think. I make these videos because I want to talk about the sport and engage in discussion, and that discussion wasn't helpful. It was just people sort of hurling insults. It wasn't discussion about the sport. And so I was looking forward to some good fights, to start talking again about matchups and who wins and what do the fights look like. And there's another thing that kind of discouraged me because there just haven't been a lot of great fights the past little while. At least not what I'm used to as far as big marquee fights. I mean, there have been some good cards. Like look at Frankie Edgar versus Brian Ortega. I mean, that was a great fight. There's been some good fights. Rockhold versus Romero was a great fight. I mean, they're out there. But in comparison to what I've been kind of used to over the past couple of years, I just feel like some of the stars are lacking, and that's creating some not as big pay-per-view events. I mean, basically what we've been getting is Chris Cyborg versus somebody who can breathe, and she beats them up, and it's cool, and then we go on. And then maybe it's just in the absence of John Jones and obviously Conor, and I was never a big Ronda fan, but with her kind of out and Holly sort of losing, I mean, all these different things, it's not that there's not the good fights, is maybe that the stars aren't there, and for whatever reason I haven't been into it as I'd like to be honest with you. I've been a fan for a long time, so I'm not this fair weather fan, but for some reason the past month or so, basically ever since I started this channel, it's been hard. There haven't been the fights that I was hoping that we could have. Anyway, that's enough complaining. You're here to watch a video on UFC 223, so that's what I'll give you. I mean, I gotta admit, this pay-per-view is not one that super excites me. The main event is Amanda Nunes versus Raquel Pennington, and there are some good fights on this card. I'm not trying to bash the entire card, but it's not the best pay-per-view that we're going to have this year. Even UFC 224 and 225 are much better than that. And so in most videos, what I'll do is I'll take a matchup and I'll devote an entire video just to that matchup. But for this one, because each individual fight isn't that intriguing to me, I thought I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking about each fight on the card in one video. So let's get straight to it. You can leave me a message in the comment section about what order you would prefer that I typically go in. For this video, I am going to go from the lower fights on the card and then end the video with the main event. If you would prefer the other way around, then you can let me know. On Facebook, you can message me, or in the comment section on YouTube, you can let me know which way you prefer it. But other than that, today I'm gonna start that way around. So in one of the better fights, or probably the more interesting fight on this card, we have Vitor Belfort against Lyoto. And I'm not sure, somebody will have to let me know, but I believe Vitor is saying it's this last fight. He's kind of flip-flopped on this one a little bit. He originally was saying that it was his retirement fight and his farewell fight, and then somewhere along the line he said, well, maybe not. And I'm not sure where he's at. I really do hope that this is Vitor's last fight. Vitor Belfort has been fighting since UFC 12. Let that sink in for a minute. UFC 12 in 1997, I believe it was. I mean, he's got to be the I don't want to say oldest as far as age, but like the most tenured fighter on the roster. I can't think of anybody who's been fighting longer than Vitor as far as those numbers go. It's just time to hang him up. And ever since, the infamous TRT ban and whatnot kind of happened, Vitor just hasn't looked that great. He's lost 3 in a row, I believe it is. And the Kelvin Gastelum fight was a no contest because Kelvin tested positive for marijuana, but he got knocked out in that fight. So it really needs to be Vitor's last fight. I'm sort of tired watching this shell of himself kind of get stomped by other people. And you have Machida, also not at the greatest point in his career, maybe for different reasons. He's been struggling. He does have a win, but before that he had 3 losses in a row. Derek Brunson was in there at one point, and just not the Machida era that we were maybe expecting to see. And so it's sort of, if Vitor loses this fight, I think it's definitely his last fight. If Machida loses this fight, you might see both of these fighters not fight in the UFC again. Machida, if he loses the fight, should probably hang it up. Vitor should hang it up regardless. So whoever loses this fight, or if Machida loses this fight, maybe that's the end of it for both of them. But I'm here to kind of give picks on these fights. I'm not going to analyze the fight a ton because I don't really know. I mean, these guys just aren't the fighters that we're used to seeing in this particular matchup. I think if Vitor just throws caution to the wind, it's his last fight. It's in Rio, so maybe the testing is a little less strict. And he just takes some Mexican supplements or whatever you want to call them, or just gets back on some TRT just for one final hurrah, then he wins this fight. If he doesn't, I think Machida uses superior footwork and he's able to hone, maybe that's not the right word, but deal with Vitor's aggression. Vitor's got a great first round. Vitor has still got power, but I feel like Machida is that bad matchup for him, and that he's elusive in a way that deals with the strengths that Vitor brings to the table. So I would pick Machida, or I will be picking Machida in that fight. Next, we have John Lineker versus Brian Kelleher at 135 pounds. And that's an important thing to note because Lineker, the big story of this fight is if he's going to make weight, or at least the big story of all of Lineker's fights these days is he going to make weight for the fight? He's missed weight a number of times at 125 pounds, and he missed weight at least once at 135 pounds. It wasn't in his last fight, but it's happened. And so eyes are on him to really nail this weight cut and show that he can be a strong contender at 135. Brian Kelleher's coming off that big win against Renan Barão in his last fight, and he looked super impressive. Maybe it's a little bit hard to tell if Brian Kelleher looked really impressive or if Renan Barão just looked really, really bad. I would lean towards that Brian looked really good in that fight. I was watching it in my basement with a friend. We had actually just finished sparring, Jesse, if you're watching, and that's when that happened. And yeah, Brian looked good, but I don't think it's going to be enough to beat John Lineker in this fight. In my opinion, I was going to call this video sort of Night of the Gatekeepers because I feel like there are a number of gatekeepers that are fighting on UFC 220. Darn, I've been saying 223. I mean to say 224. I've got that wrong in my notes here. It's UFC 224. My goodness, what a error that is. Anyway, I'm not going to go back and correct the intro, but where was I? John Lineker. I was going to call UFC 224 Night of the Gatekeepers because a lot of fighters on the card are the gatekeeper of the division. And for me, John Lineker is the gatekeeper at 135. If you beat him, then you've really proven yourself sort of worthy of a title shot. He is a great fighter. I'm not trying to take anything away from John Lineker with that whole weight cut comment. But yeah, he's definitely, in my opinion, he's the gatekeeper of this division. I do believe he wins this fight. I think Brian Kelleher, while he had a great showing against Renan Barão, John Lineker is just going to be too much for him. He's very powerful. He's very quick. And he really is a contender. I'd say at 135, I could see him fighting TJ Dillashaw again if he were to show some improvements. That was a good fight. And I would give the edge to John Lineker in this fight. Then you have, and I don't like this fight at all, but we have Mackenzie Dern versus Amanda Cooper. Now, Mackenzie Dern, remember, fought about a month and a half ago against Ashley Yoder, and she's a very famous Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. A lot of accolades in the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and has transitioned over to MMA a little while ago, and recently made it to the UFC. So the UFC here is trying to build up a name. She is apparently an attractive woman, and so that's something that I say apparently because I don't personally find her that, to be honest with you, that attractive. It's really maybe neither here nor there. But I bring it up because the UFC uses that as a marketing tool. They will market her a little bit more, maybe because of that. The Sage Northcutts, the what's her face, that dynamic. I can't remember her name, but the fighters that are easier on the eyes get a little bit more of the promotional push. And so Mackenzie Dern's got some real serious skills in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then she's got that sort of marketing factor. So they're really trying to push her here. Now, she had that win against Ashley Yoder. It was a split decision. And now they put her up against Amanda Cooper, which I think is, if you are trying to build this fighter, was probably not a great decision. Amanda Cooper has a win over Angela Magana, who is, you probably know because she had punched Chris Cyborg. That's about all you really probably know her from. And maybe her Instagram, because that gets some attention. Maybe not the best fighter out there. But Amanda Cooper does have a win over her. She fought Cynthia Carvalho. She did lose that fight, but she's been in the UFC for longer than Mackenzie Dern. She's been facing tougher and stiffer competition than Mackenzie Dern. She did TKO Angela Magana, so she's shown the ability to be able to end fights by TKO. So I think this is a tough matchup for Mackenzie Dern. I think if they maybe give her somebody. A lot of people, if you watch Luke Thomas, he was saying it's too early for her to even be in the UFC at all. There's a lot of people who were saying that you got to really slowly develop her. And after a fight about a month ago, which was a tough fight, to come right into this one, I don't know that it was the right decision if you're trying to build her up. If you're just trying to give her as much experience as possible, as quickly as possible, then okay, fine. But I give the edge here to Amanda Cooper. If I was put money on this fight, I would put my money on Amanda Cooper. I could be wrong. I mean, this is really a toss-up, but we haven't seen enough from Mackenzie Dern to really know the full scope of her, what she's going to do yet. And she's still developing very much as far as her striking and whatnot. But I think Amanda Cooper's probably the more well-rounded fighter in this one, and I would give her the edge there. Then probably the best fight on the card. Sorry, this video is probably already running a little bit long, but I want to get through these fights. The best fight on the card, in my opinion, is Jacare Souza versus Kelvin Gastelum. That's the fight to watch on this card for sure. That's the one why I'll be tuning in. It's the fight that interests me the most by far. And I'll cut right to the chase here because it took me a long time to figure out who I thought was going to win this fight. I kept changing my mind, and I think I've settled pretty firmly on Jacare winning this fight, and I'll tell you why. Jacare, really, if you look at his record, he's only lost to future champions. So he lost to Yoel Romero in a razor-close fight that a lot of people even argue that he won. And he lost to Luke Rockhold, and they've had good fights, and I think he is again that gatekeeper. I think you could call him the gatekeeper of middleweight division, and he's only really lost to really good people. And so, did he lose to Bisping as well? Is that, maybe that was one that I was thinking? I can't quite remember. But yeah, I mean, Jacare Souza is a fantastic fighter. His ground game, he's a jiu-jitsu world champion, and his striking has really improved. He's just very physically strong, and now he's fighting Kelvin Gastelum, who has been kind of impressive at middleweight. I mean, Kelvin is a top world fighter, but for me, he is a welterweight fighter. And because he's missed weight so many times, they've moved him up to middleweight, but that's not where he belongs. He belongs at welterweight if he can make that weight cut. And so has he had some success at middleweight? Yeah, he knocked out Vitor Belfort, but I mean, that's an old Vitor Belfort that no longer should be fighting young people like Kelvin Gastelum with power in their hands. He did beat Michael Bisping right after Mike lost the championship, but there's been millions of videos on it's made. Should Michael Bisping have been fighting a month and a half after he got TKO'd by George St. Pierre? That wasn't a wise decision. And so he kind of, the timing was right. I mean, the GSP timed it right with Bisping, Kelvin Gastelum timed it right with Bisping, and they kind of got their opportunity to take out this veteran at the height of his career. And I believe Kelvin's really benefited from that. And now I believe he's a little in and over his head against Jacare. Could be wrong. This fight could go either way. Like I said, I've changed my mind. Kelvin is great. He's young. He's powerful. He's well-rounded. His wrestling's strong. His striking's great. There's a lot of upsides for him. Except I think he's a 170 pounder. And I don't believe that he belongs in the middleweight division. And I think this fight looks a lot like, well, different, but the Chris Weidman fight, you saw the difference between the elite people at middleweight and then Kelvin being a welterweight who's come up. And I think in some ways the fight looks very similar. Maybe not the style of the way that it happens, but you have an elite middleweight in Jacare fighting Kelvin, who just doesn't belong at 185 pounds. And so, not taking away from Kelvin, I don't think it's going to be his night. I think you see Jacare win this. And I think Jacare goes on a little bit of a win streak here. Oh, Robert Whittaker is the other person I was thinking of, actually, not Bisping. Jacare lost to Whittaker. And so he lost to Yole, he lost to Rockhold, he lost to Whittaker. Like, he's only losing to really, really top tier guys. And so I think he edges out this fight. And then lastly, we have Amanda Nunes versus Raquel Pennington. This is the main event. I'm not really that excited about this fight, to be honest with you, which is why I'm looping all these fights into one video, because while this is a main event, the bantamweight title for women has kind of lost its luster for me a little bit, and I don't know why. Amanda Nunes is a super talented fighter, but maybe just some of the layoff. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm not super excited about this fight, and to be honest with you, I think it's quite the mismatch. I think Amanda Nunes is far and above the best 135-pound women's fighter in the world today. Maybe Ketlen Vieira will give her a bit of a run for her money in that regard. I think that's probably the next fight at 135. But Amanda is heads and tails better than Raquel Pennington in this one. A couple things to note, and I'm not trying to disrespect other people's abilities, but I just think that Raquel Pennington is getting this fight. She did because she beat Miesha Tate, who was the gatekeeper is the gatekeeper of 135. Maybe Holly Holm's the gatekeeper of 135, but Miesha would be a close second to that. And this is where I'm going to get the dislikes on the video. Miesha Tate was never, in my opinion, really that amazing, or at least she really benefited from a pretty last minute, I dare say, lucky win against Holly Holm, where she really eked out that choke after losing the entire fight, but then immediately lost the title after that. And I remember there was a period there right when Miesha was champion, and I was saying to some friends that I believe that period of time, if you look at the list of champions at the time, it was like Verdum and Miesha and Bisping was champion. And I remember saying it was the worst set of champions in UFC history. And Miesha's that gatekeeper, but she was never really that top level tier fighter for me. And so Raquel beat her at the end of her career, where she really didn't even really care anymore, not in her prime. And even when Miesha was in her prime, I didn't necessarily consider her all that great. And so I think Raquel Pennington has got that fight, obviously, because she beat Miesha, and she did have some other wins as well. But we also need to remember that was at UFC 205. And a lot of people talk about how long it's been since Conor McGregor fought. Oh, it's been forever since Conor fought. The last time Raquel Pennington fought was on that same card. She's been sitting, waiting for this title shot since then. That's a long time to be off. And I think that the ring rust, so to speak, mixed with the fact that this is her biggest fight and is going to have more media obligations than she's used to, more pressure, the lights are going to shine brighter than she's ever experienced before. Excuse me. I don't think this is a fight that she's ready for. I don't think this is even going to be close. I think Amanda Nunes walks right through her, just to put it bluntly. Maybe it's getting late and I'm not mincing my words anymore, but yeah, I think Amanda Nunes is just completely going to outmatch Raquel Pennington. And so there you have it. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else on my notes. Oh, I see that Raquel Pennington has a win over Jessica Andrade. But that was at 135 pounds. Jessica's now fighting at 115. I'm going to make a video one day and maybe the next week or so talking about how I think Jessica is going to be champion at 115 by the end of 2018. So I want to sort of predict that now, or at least I get that on the internet. But I think that's everything I have on my notes. I do like to end all my videos with a question for you to leave in the comment section. This one's very simple. What are your picks for the fights? UFC 224. What do you think is going to happen? Just list out the names of the people that you think are going to win the fight. If you want to list how you think they'll win, that's up to you. I mean, in the world of MMA, it's hard enough to pick the winner, let alone the method. If you want to leave that, go ahead. But let me know, who do you think is going to win that fight? Do you think Machida wins? Do you think Vitor wins? Do you think I'm wrong about Brian Kelleher, or do you think I'm crazy about Mackenzie Dern, or all those things? Just list out who you think wins those fights, and let's get talking about it. That's why I make these videos. I really just want to not read the insults that are being thrown at me because of, I messed up saying a word a certain way, or being called a whore for whatever reason because because of my opinion on something. I got called a whore a couple times. That was a weird one. I make these videos because I want to discuss the sport. So leave your comments on who you think is going to win the fight, and I'll let you know where I disagree, and we can talk about it. So thank you so much. That's the end of this round. I really appreciate you watching. Let me know what you think about this video and the other videos in the comment section below. And as always, fight the good fight, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to watch this content. I'm just a fan with an opinion and a camera, but I love the sport of MMA. So if you want to see some more videos, you can take a look here on the right of this screen. And other than that, I will catch you in the next video.